Welcome to my YouTube channel once again. I'm a student of Luther Rice College and Seminary. This is a video assignment where we will be discussing some topics from Neil Postman's book, Amusing Ourselves to Death. Mr. Postman goes into great lengths introducing his book and covering how Americans have moved from getting our information from the printed word to getting our information from TV and now other media devices. Amusing Ourselves to Death was written in 1985. Mr. Postman felt as if TV and the entertainment factor it provides dominates how we get and perceive information. This book was written long before the social media generation. I am certain this book would have been at least one chapter, if not longer, had he known about the mediums such as Facebook, Snapchat, and YouTube. Which brings us to our first question. The first question is Postman's book relies heavily on the premise of Marshall McLuhan's famous axiom, medium is the message. First, so we're all on the same page, let's define what an axiom is. An axiom is a postulate, is the same that is taken to be, is a statement that is taken to be true, to serve as the premise or starting point for further reasoning and arguments. I feel what McLuhan is trying to say here is it correlates to Postman's book in the same way in which a message is delivered has more to do with what is said than the content of the message itself. What I mean by this is you as the viewer will get more from this medium, a video on YouTube, in the way I deliver this message than the content itself. You will be more likely to critique my voice and whether or not I was able to keep your attention sufficiently than you will the information that you receive from this particular type of medium. What McLuhan is saying here is my message here today will have more to do with how articulate, honest, and informed I sound than the reality of these adjectives and how they actually apply to the information of Postman's book talked about here today. The next question we are going to cover today, how McLuhan's axiom impacts our attitudes towards visual media. I've never really given much thought of this concept until now. My local news station had a longtime anchorwoman. After every newscast, at the close of the broadcast, the announcer would without fail inform the viewers where the anchorwoman's clothes were provided from. This is not to say that I do not understand the purpose of advertising. But the fact that the anchorwoman was attractive and well-dressed had zero to do with what the day's local news was, but all to do with how the viewers perceived it. Good or bad news is easier to receive from an attractive, well-dressed man or woman that sounds honest and caring, rather than the same good or bad news being delivered by a man or woman whose clothes and makeup were done by the likes of Bozo the Clown. Even though the stories might be identical, the person in the wild-looking clothes and makeup would be deemed, in our minds, not to be trustworthy, regardless of their actual news content. This is not to say that all news people are not to be believed or not, especially based on their appearance. Postman also spends quite a bit of time on how the population has changed from men and women from long ago, where they got their information from the printed word and through the audible word, to from attractive newscasters and other types of TV shows. Anyone who has spent any time reading scholarly journal articles would agree with Postman that we have changed from a society where that type of pure information, void of emotion and frills, is very hard to consume now versus lively, opinion-based sources. I think if we could all be completely honest with ourselves here, most would agree that it is easier for a well-dressed, well-informed sounding person to tell us their opinion and how we should feel about it than it would be to dive into our local library and find scholarly sources and derive our own educated opinion on the same subject. While we're on the topic of the written word, let's move on to our third and final topic. How should our Christian convictions, in particular, our view on God's written revelation, shape this attitude? If we apply what we have already talked about to how it applies to God's Word and the church, I think we can see a continuous trend. The trend I'm referring to here is the trend of us wanting to be entertained by others rather than us forming our own beliefs from God's written Word, the Bible, and experiencing a relationship with Him through it. I have heard time and time again, and am guilty of saying it myself, I just didn't get anything from the message today at church. Maybe the songs that were sung were not my favorites, or the verses that the pastor used in the sermon just didn't grab me like other passages might have. This certainly falls back to McLuhan's axiom, the medium is the message. As believers, we attend worship services on Sunday to get recharged, and when we don't feel that way, when we leave, we lay the blame at the pastor's or song leader's feet. How unpopular of an idea would it be if we were supposed to go to worship service not to be entertained or to get something out of it, but to attend worship services to give worship to God and not receive? What if the blessings we received from our church worship services were a gift from God in return for the amount of worship we put in to the service? In close, let me make a plea to you. Please get into God's Word. I don't want you to think from what we have briefly talked about here today that just because your pastor dresses nice or has a well-delivered sermon that he can't be trusted. I'm saying if you're in God's Word for yourself, you will know if He can be trusted. Trust me, God will change your life through His Word. Lots of people get caught up in the these and thous of the King James Version of the Bible. If that is what's stopping you, then I urge you to invest in another version like the Holman Christian Standard Bible or countless others. When it comes to church services and reading the Bible for yourselves, don't let the medium in which you receive these dictate the message you receive from them. Thank you and God bless.